Well, all right. It is officially the throes of the sports video game news season, because we are here once again live to cover some really interesting stuff that's happening. The kind of stuff we don't want to wait for a few days or a week or so. And tonight we are here to talk about the news that broke today related to EA Access and the length of time that you get to play some of the new games that come out. So we'll get into all the specifics. Before we do that, I'll just go around real quick. Up first we have from Pasta Padre, Mr. Brian Weedeye. Brian, how are you this evening?
Doing well, thank you. And I don't know why that makes Pete Dot laugh, but I'm doing fine. And as you can see, I've painted the walls, Rich, for your grand entrance when you get here in a week or so.
Very nice.
I had to make sure the place looked proper for you, and now I feel good about it.
In Seahawks blue, I can see.
No, it's a gray. It's a dark gray, Rich.
Oh, okay.
I didn't go Seahawks colors in any of the rooms I've done so far. So, come on. I got some, like, okay, I don't have fashion sense, but I have some sense of what works and what doesn't. All right?
Up next, the man who never walks alone from That Sports Gamer, Mr. TJ Lauerman. TJ, welcome. How are you, my friend?
Rich, I don't give a crap either way. But yeah, I think I'm going to be those Redskins and try to take down your Eagles in the press for CFM next year. In like 2 weeks.
That's a whole other story. And our special guest from the newly launched DoddScientifics.com, our good friend Pete Dodd. Pete, welcome. How are you?
I am good, and for the record, Brian, the reason why I was laughing was because I didn't realize that I had the YouTube tab open, so when you were introduced, the clapping from the beginning of the show happened, and I thought you hit that button for yourself.
Yeah.
So that was something that only happened in my world and not anywhere else, and that's what I was laughing at.
You have no idea how tempted I am to use all these sound effects throughout the show and just drive Rich nuts and ruin any potential of it being added on to the actual podcast that goes out every other week. So, yeah, I mean, I've got it up on my page. I scroll over it all the time. I'm holding off.
And I appreciate that. But all right, yeah, we are here tonight to talk about EA Access. A lot of folks sending us a lot of messages about it. Quite an interesting day today. The official news that broke is that the EA Access, those of you on the Xbox One who have subscribed to the EA Access service, which gives you access, no pun intended, to a series of older games, 4 games in what they call the Vault, as well as the ability to play new games as they come out up to 5 days early. It was announced today rather quietly as a response to a tweet that for Madden 15 there is a time limit. So up to 5 days before the release, you can play up to 6 hours of Madden 15. We have been speculating on the show for a while, wondering what that what that meant. Would you get unlimited play? Would you get a couple of hours? So today it became official, 6 hours. I've got a lot of thoughts on it. We all do. But before we get into what I think, I'm going to toss it to you, Brian, because you immediately wrote a post about it. So tell me your initial reaction to the 6-hour time limit on Madden 15 for EA Access subscribers.
We had on the last Hangout, I think it was, we kind of talked about the idea of this, and I predicted 12 hours. There was obviously something that they didn't want to say because they were avoiding any and all questions about it. When they first released the details on the program, it sounded like it had a lot of value, and I don't think that changes because of this. But what does change is for those people who, to them, the most important thing is the early access period. And if you consider what EA has right now in EA Access and coming down the pipeline, this is basically a sports service right now and for the foreseeable future until they get more games into there that are non-sports. So all those sports people are coming from maybe the season ticket, which offered a different type of value, which offered a full 3 days of playing, to going to get only 6 hours worth when most people who understood this program probably thought the restrictions were for those story-based type of games, because you're not going to beat Madden in 5 days, and chances are if you're playing Madden for 5 days, a lot of it, you're going to buy the game. You're not just going to be like, well, that's the end of that. I got Madden out of my system for a year. So that's where the issue comes in, is that EA they just weren't upfront with the amount of time that you were going to be able to play Madden, and they purposefully, deliberately were posting all the time, get access up to 5 days early, or get access, actually I think on the tweets they've been saying get access 5 days early, because it is going to be the 5 days early, but they avoided talking about the limitations to that. And 6 hours over 5 days, that's basically what you can get, maybe 8 games of Madden in. If you're playing franchise and Ultimate Team, half your time might be spent messing with your rosters, so you may not get that much playtime out of it anyway. It's just it's distressing the way EA handled it, more so than it is disappointing at the length of time. If they had just come out at first and said, plus you'll get early access for 6 hours for the sports games, people probably would have been like, that's okay, that sounds good to me, with everything else the program offers. But when you do this, when you hold it to the end, that's when people get upset, and that's when people start looking for refunds because they didn't feel like those things were disclosed properly.
Same question to you, TJ. Your initial thoughts when you first heard 6 hours?
Well, the first thing, obviously, I did was I tweeted saying that I will obviously be getting an email from Brian later on this evening. Of course, that turned out to be true, and now we're doing this. 6 hours seems a little shady. I was expecting it to be at least 3 days to match up with the season ticket preview from last year. I'm wondering how much Ultimate Team has to do with this, because they did say that Ultimate Team was going to be involved in this early access time, and in the season ticket preview it was not part of that. So I'm wondering if that has something to do with they didn't want your money yet, which would seem like a really weird thing, because you think if you throw a couple bucks in, you'd be more inclined to buy the game. Everybody I talked to on Twitter today was very upset. A lot of people lost Madden 15 coins that they haven't made yet because they bet other people how long the trial period was going to be. I mean, I have some amazing followers on Twitter, so I love you all. At That Sports Gamer, if you follow. Hey, continue, Rich.
Oh boy. Same question to you, Pete. Todd, your initial reaction? I thought the tweet that you actually that I saw was a pretty interesting take on that. So, what did you think when you first heard the 6 hour number?
I was disappointed because I come at EA Access as a sports gamer, and I think that for the general gamer, EA Access is a good deal. It's like, if you're okay with sports games as well. Like, I know that there's a bunch of guys on our forums who've never played soccer before, so they're playing FIFA for the first time, so that's like a new game to them, and that's fun, and it's like, and Peggle 2, and you assume that eventually Titanfall is going to be in there, and Plants vs. Zombies and stuff like that, and I think the Vault thing is still a good deal. But if you're a sports gamer, EA Access is a pretty large step back from what season ticket was, and that's what the problem is for me personally. Is that's where I would be coming at it from. So I am seeing a deduction in value in it. Every new little wrinkle they explain just takes a little bit more value away from it, from what I would want from it.
Yeah, you bring up an interesting perspective, right? First of all, full disclosure, me, Rich Grisham, I have zero interest in EA Access for a bunch of reasons. Number one, I don't want to play Battlefield 4 or Peggle 2 nearly enough to want to pay, $5 or $10 or $30 for a year. I don't need, to have digital copies of Madden or FIFA. So from that perspective, the Vault doesn't interest me whatsoever. For the new stuff, I'm lucky enough that, I'm a freelance writer who has a 10-year track record, so I get Madden sent to me early. I'm anticipating getting NHL sent to me and FIFA sent to me early as well. So, full disclosure, I don't have a need to try to get in on the early access. So, personally, I can't even pretend to be outraged because it would be completely fake. What's interesting to me is the real dramatic. I mean, I have gotten tweets today from people on every side of the spectrum. I've got people tweeting me saying, hey, I got EA Access and I still think it's a great deal. 6 hours is cool. I got other people who are like, this is a classic bait and switch. This is a ripoff. And where I sort of land is, it's all about the initial communication, Brian. I mean, you said it early. If there had been a clearer expectation set, the message would have been much more positively received, right? If they had said, we don't know exactly how long it's going to be, right, but it's going to be between 4 and 8 hours or between 6 and 12 hours or some sort of indication, I think it would have been completely different. The other thing that I found interesting, if you look at various forums and things like that, is there's a lot of confusion still as to whether that's a demo or whether it's the full game and whether it's only for people who have already pre-bought the game or not. So there continues to be confusion in the marketplace around all of this. Pete, do you get that same sense, or do you feel like the majority of people who have EA Access fully understand this and are now just coming to grips with whether this is a service that works for them now that they sort of, are getting a better idea of the kind of access they'll have for these kind of games?
From what I can tell, I mean, and it's so difficult to wade through people's opinions because a lot of people just turn it into system wars because it's on one system and it's not on the other. So who is just trolling Xbox guys and who is actually trying to make a good point is hard to discern sometimes, But in general, there does seem to be confusion, especially about, does the save carry over only to digital or to the disc? Like, I haven't seen an answer to that. And just things that, like that we should know. I mean, like, it's live, it's out of beta. These aren't things that people should, like, people on NeoGAF who, who are people who are really clued into games, hardcore gamers, are like, I'm not exactly sure how this works. And that's weird or awful, depending on whether you're rich or you're me.
I think another interesting point, Brian, and you mentioned this earlier, is season tickets set a precedent. And that precedent is once season ticket goes live, you can play the game from here until it launches. However, season ticket also had the precedent that whatever you play during season ticket, for the most part, is self-contained. Like, I couldn't play if I had like the early copy of the regular version, I couldn't play somebody who was playing the digital season ticket copy. So there's a bunch of interesting, weird, random stuff around that. Whereas EA Access is not season ticket. EA Access is a larger program, but yet when it comes to the early access, there was a clear precedent in people's minds that, they're saying it's timed access, but we assume that's for story-driven games. For sports games, it's always been full access in the past. Is that the reason you think that there is such a uproar about 6 hours?
There's a segment of people that will be the reason for them. I don't think that's the main reason, though, because season ticket was not heavily utilized by people. EA never advertised it. Only really the very hardcore people who want to pay early to play games would go get it. I think the biggest issue with the way EA Access was rolled out is essentially they did mention limited, but people's expectations of limited are more so that it's limited to those 5 days rather than it's limited to a few hours in those 5 days. And EA did nothing really to dispel that as an assumption. They just let people go on. They refused to answer questions on social media. They refused to answer questions about it from media, because they wanted people to buy into the program only before they found out this news. Now, like everybody's talked about, there's a lot more to the EA Access program than just this early play period. but there are people who are buying into the early play period because they wanted it for Madden, especially because there's no demo this year. To me, that's why I had suggested before we found out this, because it seemed fishy to me that if you're going to pay for it, pay for 1 month, pay the $5, and then we'll see what happens instead of paying the $30. And I hope some people took that advice, but I think it's just the way they rolled it out, the way they kind of skimmed over that part of it. It wasn't even really part of their initial release. The 2-hour thing was discovered a little later, that it would be a minimum of 2 hours for every game, and then EA never really did anything to make people think that sports would be one of those games that really needed to be limited to a handful of hours, because you're not damaging sales by doing that. Like I said earlier, those people who are playing, if those people are playing for 15 hours or 20 hours over that 5 days, those are the people who are buying your game. So it's kind of a confusing way for them to approach it, especially for Madden without having a demo. That's just a touchy subject right now.
So, TJ Lauerman, 6 hours is a curious amount of time. Is that, in your mind, just in a vacuum, we'll take out sort of the precedent setting of season ticket, people's expectations. Just 6 hours, is that a good amount of time for someone to get a really good feel for whether Madden 15 or NHL, assuming NHL and FIFA have those same time frames, which at this point we shouldn't assume anything, but is that a good amount of time for someone to get early access and get their feet wet in Madden?
Yeah, it's probably enough to know if you want to purchase the game or not. I don't think I've ever played a demo more than 6 hours in my life, or maybe 6 hours combined through multiple game demos. The one thing I really worry about is that people are going to play the demo, and they're going to say, hey, I have this free copy of Madden 25. They're going to download that, install that, not be able to tell much of a difference, because even we said last year, going from 360 to PS4 or whatever way you went, that it's not something you notice the first 3 or 4 games you play. It's something you notice in game 10, 15, 20. That's when you start noticing the real changes from year to year in these games. So I'm worried that there's going to be people that play that 6 hours, say, this is cool, let me go check out Madden 25, and then they're not going to purchase Madden 15 because they've gotten their fill and they realize that Madden 25 is a competent game.
So, Pete Dodd, is this situation a black eye for EA Access? Is this kind of now getting to the point where expectations are going to properly be set moving forward? What's your take on just the overall view right now of EA Access based on today's information?
Yeah, I think that people, it had a public reception problem in the first place because of the fact that it was only on one platform. It's on the less popular platform, so therefore the larger group of people were complaining about it and saying, it's crap. And there is just a general distrust of EA. And a lot of people were like, this looks like it's really cool, and then people like me, and I hate being cynical, but I feel like it's not even being cynical, it's just being right. Like whenever something comes to EA, it's like there's going to be a catch. And there always is. They always sort of live up to that.
So, Brian, when it comes to Ultimate Team, we're assuming, again, full access to Ultimate Team. What sort of wrinkle does that throw into the 6 hours and the overall EA access to Madden 15, do you think?
Well, I'm sure EA wants to get people hooked on Ultimate Team so that they go and buy the game. I'm not sure if that's a whole big part of this, though, personally. They have plenty of Ultimate Team extras for pre-ordering the game or for buying the Ultimate Edition. I think, of course, they're trying to find any way to get people hooked into that ecosystem and then continuing on for the next 6 months or however long it may be. So they're going to open it up early and forget the whole idea that let's keep it balanced so everybody can start at the same point. Now let's just go ahead, all you people who paid for access, and get a jump start on everyone else.
I've been thinking about this quite a bit today. I mean, again, looking at, and believe me, as again, I find myself saying a lot, like for me personally, I can't view this like I think a whole lot of other people view it, right? Because I mean, I guarantee you there are plenty of people who have said to themselves, "Hey, I'm buying EA Access so that the weekend before Madden comes out, I can play the heck out of it." Whereas a guy like me, who, if I wasn't doing the review, right, and I was just a guy who loves Madden, which I, have been in the past, and I want to play it, but I've got 2 jobs and kids and family and stuff. To me, 6 hours on its own is that's plenty of time. So I'm trying to sort of balance the reality of, I think, some people with the amount of time, 6 hours being a lot of time, and the reality of other people where 6 hours is an outrageously small amount of time. And I don't know, I mean, let's assume that time limits need to be a thing for whatever reason, right? Whether it's for piracy concerns or bandwidth concerns or the ability for the infrastructure to support it. I don't know, right? But let's assume that time limits do need to be imposed for all games. I mean, what would a number have been that would made you not cynical or not feel cynical about it, Pete Dodd? What's a number?
Well, for me, the number would be the same as what the season pass was. But if I could make a quick point, jumping back a second, talking about the Ultimate Team, the fact that Ultimate Team is in it. If, let's say, it was the full 3 days, you had your 70-something hours of being able to play the game and play Ultimate Team, that could then turn EA Access into a pay-to-win kind of scenario, because in 6 hours you can get a little bit ahead. In 70 hours you can get a lot ahead, and you could see people, just buying cases of Mountain Dew and just playing Ultimate Team just like crazy. So then on day one, when the rest of the world gets it, their team is all superstars and they're just destroying people, and so the fact that Ultimate Team is part of the early access may be a part of why it's shorter, but the solution is don't make it part of the early access. But that isn't a solution to them, because early access is how they make money after they already got your $60. So they want to get all of us into that.
Yeah, I didn't even think about that. That makes sense. So I'll still ask you the question, take Ultimate Team out of it, right? Because other than TJ, none of us are particularly big in Ultimate Team. What would a number of hours been for you, Pete? That would have been like, that came out and like, oh, okay. I didn't think there were going to be time limits, but that number seems okay to me.
I expected what we got with the season ticket thing. So waking up Saturday morning and then it's there until Monday evening, kind of thing. But I'm with you. Like, I don't think 6 hours is short. Like, I'm not outraged at 6 hours. 6 hours is plenty of time to play the game. And if you're on the fence, figure out whether, like, oh, this year it seems improved, or it's still doing the same things that have driven me crazy, so I'm going to, I'm going to skip it. Like, 6 hours isn't awful. I think it's what you said, what Brian said, what everyone but TJ has said, is that if they just set it up front, it wouldn't be as big of a shock. Like, we would already know. There wouldn't be an emergency podcast happening right now,
So, TJ, one of the things that I was surprised about, though, like, when you're looking at some of the forums, is there was some of the expected knee-jerk, EA hatred that you kind of tend to see with all these things. But there were actually a surprising number of people who were, in typical TJ Lauerman fashion, like, hey, I'm kind of cool with that. No big deal. Were you expecting that sort of that prism of reaction, or did you think it was all going to kind of sway from heavily on one side or the other?
Yeah, well, I thought it was going to be limited, but definitely not this much. So I knew there was going to be some sort of pushback. I just didn't think it was going to be at this level. Because even earlier this morning, I made a joke. Someone said, "Oh, 8 days or what was it, 3 days left till I can play Madden?" I was like, "Yeah." And in 3 days and 2 hours, you'll have to wait another 5 days to play Madden. Didn't realize how accurate that joke was. Only off by 4 hours, but yeah, I definitely thought we were going to get the full 3 days that you got with the season ticket package. Especially since, in theory, it was cheaper. Because I don't think you could buy monthly season ticket access last year.
So an interesting tweet from Peter Moore, Brian Weedeye, that you wanted to make sure that we mentioned. This comes from him, and when was this? This was August 18th, right?
Yeah,
So
not long ago, a few hours maybe tops.
And he says, trials on EA Access are separate from game demos. Trials are the full game. Download, try it, then decide if you want to buy it.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that I see in that tweet that, again, I could have easily missed it, right? But as he uses the word trials there, to me, the word trial is very different than full game access. Is that perhaps some nomenclature that could have better been used, or do you think it has been and we have just chosen to willfully ignore some of the language that EA put out there when they initially announced the EA Access program?
I definitely see more mentions of trials now, and that's something that perked my ears up a little bit in the last few weeks, and it's not to most people, if you're limiting them, it's essentially a demo, even if you get full access to all the modes. Now, my issue actually with his tweet though is if you look at that, if you read it again, he skips kind of an important step there, the whole paying part, which is kind of an important step in this whole thing. Not everybody owns it. Not everybody has access to it. Actually, only Xbox One people can have access to it. So this whole idea that this is some generous thing EA is offering when they tried to sell you on it without actually telling you of these restrictions beforehand is something I take issue with.
Pete Dodd, one of the things that we haven't spent any time talking about, but to get access to all of these things on EA Access, these are all digital. These things cost bandwidth. They cost space on your hard drive. At what point could that aspect of this become troublesome?
Well, it's going to get worse and worse. I mean, game sizes are huge to start this generation, and they're only going to get bigger. I think what EA Access is trying to do is get us to download the game and then be like, well, we've already downloaded it, so therefore we should just buy it digitally because it's there. But the problem is that if I'm somebody who has not good internet, which I kind of am since I've moved to Utah, I finally found a good provider, but at a certain point, it would have taken me far longer than 6 hours to download Madden to play it for 6 hours, and that's crazy. And then when you get into that people are talking about data caps and all of this stuff, like, oh, do I want to use 20 gigabytes of my data cap for 6 hours of gameplay for something that I'm going to buy on disc, 5 days later?
So with that...
and I think with the purchase, if you do the digital purchase, I think you don't have to re-download the file. You might just have to install like a little patch or something that...
That's I would assume so. I would think that's what they want, is them basically saying like, hey, we already have it on your hard drive. Just give us the money and you're ready to go. It's like a preload basically.
Yeah.
But if you're just doing that could be a fifth of your bandwidth cap just to do one 6-hour trial.
Yeah.
Kind of ridiculous.
I've also seen some other questions today around, well, what does the 6 hours mean? Does it mean when I'm playing the actual game? Does it mean if I'm browsing the menus, if I'm setting up stuff in Ultimate Team? And I don't know if there's been any sort of official announcement as to specifically what that is, but I'm going to assume from the moment that you're able to, once it's been installed, that you click the sort of, all right, let's play Madden, and then you sit through the 4 minutes of connecting to everything and updating every single thing that in the world needs to be, all the way until the clock, no matter what you're doing, I'm assuming that's what the clock is. It's another.
How awful is that to think you're playing a game and you see like a timer counting down until you can't play anymore? I don't think that's really an enjoyable way to go about it.
Yeah, I've got enough anxiety.
I better not play that because I have to really manage my time here efficiently.
Yeah, I've got enough anxiety in my life. I don't need a counter counting down the seconds that I have left to play Madden. Let's look at a couple of some of the community feedback. And by the way, there have been posts exploding all over Operation Sports and obviously Brian on Pasta Padre as well as in various other forums today. So let's look at a few of these. Up first, you basically said, Brian, shoot me some thoughts. So Jason Renner says, my only thoughts are that they had a great opportunity there, that they're just dropping the ball everywhere. Colton Rice says 6 hours is a slap in the face. It should be 10 to 24 hours for a sports game. You can't even get a feel for all the new features in 6 hours. To which, non-sports gamers would say, come on, just a roster update. But I won't say that. Bullwinkle82 says, I think they should have released a trial for EA Access people and a demo. Demo isn't the full game. It's only 2-minute quarters. Alex Grit says 6 hours is fine for a public demo, but since you're paying for this early access, I think it should have been much longer. Jordan Lee says 6 hours if you did a monthly subscription and unlimited if you paid yearly would have been much better. That's interesting. Didn't even think about that, but basically because they have multiple payment tiers, if you bought the whole year, maybe getting either unlimited or at least longer. Let's see here. Christian Antonio says it's literally a 12th of what they offered for season ticket. 3 full days, now just 6 hours. Was planning to get it, won't now. I'm not sure if he's talking about EA Access or actually the full Madden game. Bowinkle also says paying for a limited trial seems wrong. Heels972 says they should have made it more clear that it was only 6 hours instead of saying 5 days early access. I think that's the really... as we mentioned, that's the key thing. I mean, I tweeted this earlier today. Setting clear expectations with your customers would have really, really helped us. And obviously, in their description, they did say limited time. But again, the precedent of season ticket being unlimited and all that, I definitely think there was a lot of people who did not feel it. Let's see. Basically several people saying EA sucks, which we'll just leave that at that. William Harris says at least give us the option to get season ticket. So some pretty strong negative feelings. I think I want to close on this note. Now that we have, I think, a better feeling for what we're getting, and let's assume, and again we have to assume because there hasn't been any information clearly communicated. Let's assume FIFA and NHL and NBA are all in the 6 hour range now as well. So now that we think we have a clearer picture as to what EA Access is, Brian Weedeye, is it overall a good value for the $30 a year and or the $5 a month?
It would depend on what you want, what's important to you individually. I think as a whole it is. If you have any interest in those vault games, then that's a steal essentially. Or if you're paying on a monthly basis just for those 6 hours, maybe $5 for those 6 hours are worth it to you. I think it's at least something to consider. I wouldn't dismiss it outright, and I wouldn't recommend it wholeheartedly to anyone either. It's going to depend on your individual interests and what how your value varies from game to game.
Pete Dodd, same question to you. Overall, do you feel EA Access is a good value, or has it lost its luster?
I think for the gamer who is open to sports games, it's a good value. I think for the sports game obsessed, it's gone in the wrong direction. If you think about like 2 years ago, like wasn't season ticket $25 a year or $20 a year? Like it was. Yeah. So it was cheaper. You got it longer, and before you even got the thing, there was a demo that everyone got to play. And you got 20% off on DLC, I believe, or was it 15 or 20? It was 20. Definitely higher than 10.
Yeah.
So all of the Ultimate Team guys, like that discount was worth it. They were basically getting a free pack every 5 that they bought. So if you like, for sports gamers, things have gone downhill. But if just gamers that are into EA games and are open to playing sports, $30 a year is not a lot of money, and the Vault's cool. Personally, I own every game in the Vault, like including Peggle 2. So it has 0 value to me, And once Madden 15 comes out, Madden 25 is done, So, and same thing with FIFA. Like, it's not like we go back like oh, let's play last year's game.
Well, the good thing is Ultimate Team is not killing any other modes that we love and hold dearly in any other kinds of games at all. So at least we don't have that. Wait, what?
All right, DJ's fault, I think, on that one.
We'll save that for another day. Same question to you, TJ. Now that we sort of have a better feel for what EA Access truly offers, do you think it's a good value? Do you think it's of no value? What are your thoughts on it now?
Yeah, like we've said, obviously it's a case-by-case basis. If you're a super hardcore Ultimate Team guy, that 10%, you get 6 hours to get in there and start grinding solos, and you're going to have that 10% off. You'll obviously make up that 10%, or you'll spend so much that $30 makes that 10% good for you. But if you're just kind of like a casual sports gamer, it's probably not really worth it. As long as you're getting, for the other games, you're going to get demos, so you'll know what you're getting into before they even get onto the service. And if you like all sorts of stuff, it's a good deal. I want to play some Peggle 2. I can't right now because I don't have an Xbox One. If I did, I would definitely slap down $30 to play that and play Battlefield, and I'd do it.
You are not the first person I've heard today say, "Hey, man, I love Peggle 2, so it's good for me for that." So
Peggle 2 is awesome.
So, I mean, clearly, I think we're all in agreement that better communication would have alleviated a lot of these problems. Just saying the word limited time is not a catch-all for you to say 6 hours when your precedent is that it's unlimited access and expect everyone to go, cool, no problem, man, I'm good with that. Now, granted, I think some of the outrage or some of the negativity definitely comes from the generic anti-EA sentiment out there, but a lot of it was very heartfelt from people who clearly expected a lot more like the season ticket access they've had in the past. I'm not saying anybody's right, I'm not saying anybody's wrong, but there were definitely some missteps committed here, in my opinion, on the communication front from EA. And Brian Weeda, if you remember, I said it maybe even as last week. I was like, maybe they don't even know yet. Like, I'm sort of I have the sneaking suspicion that this is all kind of coming together sort of last minute. Could be wrong, but I don't think 3-6 months ago, they knew that it was going to be 6 hours, or they knew that it was going to be unlimited or anything like that. So yeah, even a lot of these things are coming together, not just EA, but just a lot of the things that we're seeing when it comes to the new consoles are coming together rather last minute, as opposed to well planned out years ahead.
Yeah, but in those cases, then you don't ask for people's money before you even know what the service is going to provide.
Well, so then Kickstarter and pre-ordering of consoles or games should never happen then, too.
Yeah,
under that, guys.
Hey, I always say, if you're going to pre-order a game, do it the Friday or the Monday before it comes out, because you don't know what you're going to be getting until that day.
That's a good point. All right, so we could go on, but we won't. I think we covered all the topics that we wanted to tonight. You can look for us again shortly once we know for certain what's happening with NHL. Obviously, a lot of people asking us about that, with the brewing controversy over EASHL and GM Connected and other things. We are watching that very closely, hoping to get some official reaction on that, so you can look for some more rapid reaction. But until then, I want to thank TJ Lauerman from That Sports Gamer. I want to thank Brian Weeda from Pasta Padre. I especially want to thank our friend Pete Dodd from the newly launched Dodd Scientifics, a brand new website. You launched it last week. Congratulations, Mr. Dodd.
Thank you.
For the launch of that. Very exciting. A lot of great stuff going on over there, particularly in the forums. Go check that out. So, for everybody, thanks, guys, for watching, and we'll talk to you again real soon.